Hey, what's up? Hello, Futurecasters. Welcome to another episode of Past, Present, Futurecast, the podcast that's also a tarot card reading. If you are watching the video version on YouTube, which I do recommend, you're getting a glimpse of me more or less in my natural state. Makeup off, skincare already on, very low lighting, and I am working on getting an episode out at a somewhat unreasonably late hour. Before we dive into this week's very fascinating interview with human design expert Shannon Walton, I want to let you know that I have a free workshop on personal tarot archetypes, also called tarot soul cards, coming up on March 21st. This is a virtual workshop, so you can join us from anywhere, and if you can't make it live, I will be sending out a recording to all who register. Live attendance, however, is encouraged, and I'll reward those who show up with a discount code for a one-on-one session with me. Visit my booking page, calendly.com/Persephonic to register. A link will be in the show notes. Heads up that I'm going to pop into the middle of this episode with some more information about my services, and I'll look just as put together in that clip as I do here. But if you're already dying to know more about my private sessions, group classes, and upcoming retreats, do go poke around my website, persephonictarot.com. That's PERSEPHONICTAROT.com. Or follow me on Instagram at Persephonic777. Again, all links will be in the show notes. Now please enjoy this interview, and I'll see you again in a couple of weeks. All right, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am here with Shannon Walton. Shannon is a human design consultant, a transit journey guide, and creator of the motion chart. Her work bridges astrology, magic, mysticism, and liberation practices for imagining a new world, which is so important right now. And this is the second time we're starting this recording because Mercury retrograded all over us a few minutes ago. And I'm really excited to have this conversation because you come from a perspective and a system that I know very little about. I was able to join a workshop that you taught. I think that was last summer. I was very graciously invited by Nexus to join your workshop. What was the title of that workshop, if you recall when it was that we met?
Yeah, it was May of last year, and the title was Planetary Magic with Human Design. So you actually entered human design through a back door. Yeah.
Okay, I'm really excited to talk about your human design practice because it seems like additionally expansive to what the system that has been created already is. Like, does that make sense? Like, it feels like based on being an outsider to the human design system and also being somewhat of an outsider to your work as well, from that outside perspective, it does seem like you are working on adding and expanding and growing the tradition. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's really accurate. Right.
So let's start with what is human design, because I need that question answered, and I'm gonna assume that some people who are listening also need that question answered to get going in this conversation.
So I'm going to give you the non-traditional answer. This is a theme for me. um, Human design is a cosmology. It's a story of what we are and how we came to be and how the world functions, how our universe functions. The general answer you'll get to that question is that human design is a system that is a synthesis of astrology and the I Ching and the chakra system and the Kabbalah tree of life. Which is true. It is a synthesis of those things. It's a system that was transmitted to somebody, Ra Uru Hu, in 1987. And some people call it channeled, but for him, it was a very intense 8-day experience that I don't think channeling quite captures the intensity and complexity of. The main components of human design, the pieces that I think were transmitted we're a cosmology, a story about what we are and how this universe works. A body graph, which is a new type of chart that maps our astrological, maps our astrology onto a new map. And that map, the body graph, brings together the chakra system and the tree of life into this map. So it's pretty much mapping your planetary placements in your astrological chart onto a sort of new house system that takes us into the body, like a 4D house system. And another unique thing about the body graph in human design is that it works with two astrological charts. So there's the chart for the day you were born, and then there's a chart for there's a set of data for the day you were born, and there's a set of data for a day about 3 months before you were born. And it brings together these two sets of data into this chart called the body graph. But actually, if you were into astrology and you wanted to look up the date of that chart that's roughly 3 months before your birth, you could pull an astrological chart of that date and look at them astrologically as well. It is actually grounded in astrological data that's just presented and mapped in a new form. And then the final piece of what was transmitted to Ra was this chart that looks more like an astrological chart, which is called the Rave Mandala. And what that is it is the zodiac broken down into 64 segments instead of 12. So you still have the 12 divisions of the 12 signs mapped onto the Rave Mandala, but you also have 64 divisions within that represent the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. So this is where the I Ching comes in, so that each gate in human design corresponds to a hexagram of the I Ching and is mapped on to a center or chakra in the body, and connects to other gates through channels, which are like the pathways in the tree of life. And so it is a mapping of our energy system. It's a mapping of the sequences of the cycles of human life and experience, and it's a mapping of the archetypes of human life and experience. Okay, I'm going to stop. I said a lot.
Okay, so it's a very complex system, is what I'm hearing, that is working to synthesize different, maybe disparate systems that have, in different cultures and traditions, all been generally working on answering the same question of how does the universe work and how do we work within that system of the entire universe. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. Okay. And so I hear, as I look into human design or hear about it from other people who have dabbled or maybe are critical of it or you are supportive of it, I hear a lot about that person who channeled or received the information of human design. He seems like a controversial figure in even the human design world. Is
Mhm.
that true?
Yeah, I would say that that he is a controversial figure. Um, part of what I find complicated about him and about the system is that it is a synthesis of wisdom traditions from all over the world. And
Hmm.
part of his language, part of his sharing about the system is to name it a nine-centered system, to say this is nine-centered wisdom, and that everything that came before, um, you know, 1781 when Uranus was discovered, and we kind of went through this mutation from seven-center beings to nine-center beings, is seven-centered. And so I come from a background of women's studies. I was in academia for a long time. And studied.
Also have a degree in women's studies.
Did oh
Yeah, that was what I got my bachelor's degree in, was in women's studies.
yeah, so it's complicated, right? Because here is this system that I've used to liberate myself in so many ways. And also, here is the system that this white man kind of brought together all of these ancient wisdom traditions and then said, this is the nine-centered way. Forget about all of those seven-centered traditions that this is synthesizing. And so a lot of my work has been about undoing that and pulling people back into what is the tree of life and what is Kabbalah outside of human design? What is the chakra system outside of human design? What is the I Ching outside of human design? What is astrology? That yes, these are synthesized in the way they come together in the body graph is profound. It's been profoundly liberating in my life to use the body graph as a tool to understand myself and to use the rave mandala and the chart I've created, the motion chart, to kind of find my place in the universe and the flow of life in the evolution of us as a collective. And at the same time, like, honor the wisdom traditions that this is born out of, and to know that those are still, I believe those are still relevant pathways for discovery that human design can't get you to. There are things that I've learned from studying the Tree of Life in a year-long mystery school and an initiatory, mystery school that human design can never teach me through doing ritual, from being in community, from working with magic, that human design couldn't get me to. There's things I've learned about the I Ching and studying the I Ching and chanting the hexagram structures and feeling the different frequencies of each of the hexagrams outside of their human design gate names, feeling that in my body and getting in touch with, the traditions that is grounded in. And so, yeah, I think Ra is a controversial figure. I think a lot of us who are aware of colonialism and who are aware of these different forces of domination and power control and how they operate in the world do struggle with some of the ways Ra talks about human design, some of the concepts and tools he introduced after, beyond the transmission of the knowledge, beyond the chart, some of his techniques, the way he introduces hierarchy into every element of this system is challenging, right there. And so I've really found my work as offering a balancing force to that highly masculine, hierarchical view of the body graph and what human design is. Uh, a highly Ra's the way that Ra worked with the charts and the way that he taught and the tools he created are so much about individuation and so much about strategy and strategizing your way into this kind of enlightenment. And it's even in concepts like your inner authority. There's a hierarchy of, intelligences in your body, and we pick the one that's the loudest, and that's the one you make decisions with. And my work is kind of like coming in and saying, how can I offer an alternative entry point into this, where my approach to inner authority is holistic. Every definition in our body has an intelligence that we can tap into. They all speak in different ways and in different contexts. How can we honor every part of ourselves? How can we look at our designs and the hanging and dormant gates as the relational parts of ourselves instead of the not self? So yeah, I think I greatly value the foundational tools that Ra created. I greatly value that he brought this system through into the world. And I also see many ways in which we could get more, we could approach it differently and start to bring in different ways of working with it that are more suited for this time that we're in right now.
I really appreciate that insight into how human design came to be and what it stems from, and how to kind of revisit that to utilize it as more of a liberatory practice. As you're talking, I draw some parallels to tarot, the tradition of tarot, and how the decks and the imagery that we pull from today, had so many influences and pulled from different wisdom traditions. If we're going back to the Order of the Golden Dawn, they were pulling from wisdom traditions that were then kind of being pushed through the eye of the needle of colonialism, in many ways. And in this day and age right now, as we continue to work with the tarot, there are so many tarot scholars and deck creators who are working on creating more, who are working on questioning some of that and bringing more decolonizing tarot, or bringing more queer theory into it, or bringing more modern understandings of how we can relate to ourselves and our own culture and other cultures in a way that is creative and liberatory rather than destructive and extractive and colonizing. Um, Another thing that comes to mind as you're talking about this is how a couple episodes ago, 2-3 episodes ago, when I talked to Rose about her Reiki practice, and I think we talked about it in the episode. If not, I know she's been emphasizing this recently in kind of how she's been talking about Reiki online, is that so many teachers and systems of Reiki that have been developed extract or divorce it from the Japanese roots. And maybe there are teachers who aren't teaching the Japanese names for the kotodamas, for the symbols, for what it is that we're working with in Reiki, and how that is kind of a bastardization of the practice. But then there are ways to honor that in a healthy way, and teach it in a way that is trying to get away from that extractive nature, that the colonization of it all. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? So that's really interesting, kind of hearing where human design came from, the influences that are involved in it, and how you're working to understand those pieces, to get an understanding of what are the pieces as whole systems that came together to form into human design, and how can knowing those systems more deeply help then create a system of human design that is more respectful of those original parts and liberatory as a practice and as a system.
Yeah. And how can maybe people working with different wisdom traditions come and pull something out of human design and take it back and change it and turn it around and make it something that something they take out of human design, right? Like that. I was all in my undergrad. I was a comp lit major, and I was in a big department where we worked with deconstruction and pulling theoretically pulling things apart and understanding how they were built, and a lot of my work in critical theory is about understanding um, systems and how they can become different different things. And so part of playing with human design with me has been like, oh, can I take this piece out and use it somewhere else? And if this I think especially for astrologers, I think astrologers can really go into human design and take out whatever they want and take it back and leave the rest. I think type, strategy, and authority are the main concepts that Ra created for people to use human design. But just because he created those tools doesn't mean that um, those are the tools we have to use to engage the cosmology, to engage the body graph, to engage the rave mandala. If whenever I meet astrologers, I encourage them, like, come in, play, and take something out and go bring it to astrology and remove it from this type, strategy, and authority context. Like, go make some new concepts. What concepts come out of you when you play with understanding the zodiac is 64 instead of 12? What comes out of you when you see the gates of the I Ching aligned with the signs? Like, what comes out of you when you associate certain places in the zodiac with places in the body or energy chakras? So I'm very much, I mean, a lot of my fun with this system has been meeting people who are not into human design, who are doing work in other systems, and helping them pull out what they can use from human design and use it in their own way.
Very cool. Very cool. I really like that. And I pulled while you were talking about some of your journey of getting to this, what feels to me like very comprehensive understanding, to a point where you can play with it now of human design. I flipped over the card that came up for the past here, and I'm sure there's more to dive into, but I'm already seeing correlations between how you're discussing that it was important for you to learn more about the individual parts, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, the chakra systems, and how kind of sinking into each of those gave you a lot more information. And the card that came up is the Two of Swords. The Two of Swords here in this deck. This is the Hoi Polloi deck from 1972. So a nice vintage deck that was heavily inspired by the classic Smith-Waite deck, the imagery that Pamela Coleman Smith created. So the image that we have is a person sitting, a feminine looking person sitting in front of a body of water. Their arms are crossed over their chest and they have a sword in each hand, and they're blindfolded. Their eyes are closed and there's a moon, a crescent moon above them. And when I think of the Two of Swords, one of the things that I think of is that symbolism of kind of closing off to external information to dive really deeply into kind of what it is that you know and sense and feel is true. So I'm seeing this correlating to you kind of making the active choice to not take everything that was said or written or produced by the creator of this system just at its face value, at its word, and kind of giving yourself the space and the integrity to the phrase "do your own research" comes up. That's such a loaded phrase. But to really kind of shut off the external influence to be like, I'm gonna dive really into this tradition. I'm gonna chant the names of the, oh, what are they called in the I Ching?
I chant the lines of the hexagram. Yeah. So the
The
structures.
hexagrams. Yeah, chanting the hexagrams and feeling that in your body and
Yeah.
seeing like, what information does that tell me? That to me is very Two of Swords way of approaching, exploring a new topic.
Yeah. It's very much been a practice of getting into the body and learning from experience and learning from feeling. And yeah, there was a long period of taking in a lot of information, and then it became a period of realizing, oh, there's information in my body. Not all learning, not all knowledge, not all information is in words and books and systems. Some of it comes from within, and even that power of chanting the 6 lines of a hexagram, and I learned that practice from a man named Robin Armstrong, who was spent a lot of time in a Hari Om ashram chanting Hari Om, and he applied that practice to chanting the sequence of the hexagram, the early heaven sequence of the hexagrams around the wheel. It's an ancient sequence of placing these hexagrams around a wheel, and it's a sequence that shows kind of the natural progression of life, the natural progression of every cycle. And so, that practice is one in which you chant the six lines of every hexagram are composed of yin and yang lines. And so in this practice, every time there's a yang line, you chant Om, and every time there's a yin line, you chant Hari. And so there's obviously a syllabic difference, like between Om, how Om feels in your body, and Hari, feels in your body. And the practice is to chant starting at the bottom and up to the top, and to do it all in one breath. For me, it's become a practice of doing it all in one breath. So as you reach the top, you feel what it feels like to reach for the next hexagram, to run out of air and feel the reaching, in your body. And so this practice of breath, of in-breath and out-breath, of what it feels like to contain all of this within one breath, this practice of feeling the vibrational difference between Om and Hari, and how Hari feels in the second line versus how Hari feels in the sixth line. Sometimes a Hari is really hard to get out in the sixth line. And just that kind of intuitive practice, that kind of embodied practice where I have a sense of what, it feels like to chant Om 6 times versus Hari 6 times, which is the 1 and the 2 opposition in the wheel, the creative and the receptive force. There's so much wisdom and learning and knowledge in that's you can't get from any human design book about gate 1 and gate 2. You just can't get it. It's a type of knowledge you really do have to close out and go inside to get.
I think one of the things that's most intriguing to me about human design is the way that it is bringing a lot of this cosmology into the physical body. I work as a massage therapist and I do a lot of energy work, and I'm working a lot with the physical body, and at the same time working a lot with astrology and the planets. I'm really liking this melding of the two. I've seen in just some I've just seen the phrase thrown around in some writings that you've put up on human design, but looking to identify muscular tension when muscular tension is increasing. Can you explain a little bit about the connection to the physical body and tension in the body and human design?
Yeah. So that was on a post where I was talking about a current global transit, which means a transit that all of us are experiencing. And that's between the north and south node in gate 37 and gate 40. So gate 40 is the will center. And gate 37 is the emotional solar plexus center. And together when those two gates when planets are in those two positions in the sky where those gates are, it forms what's called a channel. And so it turns something on in our system. Some people have this defined naturally as part of their design, and others don't. But for right now, with the nodes in these oppositional places in the sky, turning this channel on that connects willpower to emotional sensitivity, we all have this channel. And so what I was talking about in terms of muscular tension is, in human design, there are circuits that move through this energy, that connect the centers or chakras, in the body and in the body graph. And this is part of what's called the tribal circuit, which is our village, our community, our bonded relationships. The tribal circuit is everything to do with like territory and resources and relationship. It's our workplace, our home, where we live, the people we eat with, the people we touch, the people we commune with, that we pray with, that we dance with. This is the tribe. These are the the emotional bonds that connect us, and the bonds of shared land and shared space and shared resources. And so there is this mechanism in the 3740 that is an emotional wave that is about needs and getting our needs met within the tribe. And so when these two gates are defined and this channel is formed, there's a sensitivity to our needs and the needs of others that arises in our body, and this kind of gauge that we attune to in our body, that we can become aware of, where when our needs are not being met, we kind of contract. And there is this response in the body when a need is not being met. So maybe even as simple as hunger, right? Like, say, hangry, right? That's term hangry. Like, we are hungry, we don't have food, and we get tense and we start to, feel this nervousness about when we're going to get to eat and where we're going to get the food from. And then we get this angriness and we get tenser. And then somebody maybe says the wrong thing to us and we explode on them. And we just, that's a very basic, simple response or example. But there is this, this mechanism in us that functions so that we get our needs met, so that we come to the table and we bargain with each other. We compromise, we negotiate. I share my needs, you share yours. We make sure that everybody is getting the rest they need and putting in the work. This is a channel of reciprocity. And so there can be a deep sense of acceptance and generosity when you're feeling that relationships are reciprocal. There can be such a wonderful opening to the other and such affection for the other when a relationship and a bond is reciprocal. You're giving and you're receiving and it's flowing. And then here comes the tension when suddenly there is not reciprocity, and your body becomes aware of it, and your body starts to constrict and contract. And so, yeah. So I think the post that you probably saw was me trying to bring people's attention that we're in this right now. We've been in this from December 22nd, and we will be until May 13th. And so now the time, and this happens twice a year because these two gates are in opposition in the wheel. So it happens with the sun and the earth twice a year, but only a week at a time. This is, almost 6 months, right? So with the nodes, it's longer. And so this happens every roughly 9 years with the nodes. So roughly every 9 years with the nodes, nobody gets out of this process of being aware of their tribal bonds and relationships and where they're reciprocal and where they're not. And this, often we do this unconsciously when this happens, where we don't know the transits are moving us, and it just turns into tension, explosion, yelling, anger, breaking up, ending things, pulling away, rejection. This wave moves from acceptance to rejection, and then it's just done. And then the transit ends and we've ended things, or we've exploded, or, things have come to the surface and we don't know why. But knowing this gives us a chance to work with it a little bit more, to feel into, okay, this is Pisces and Virgo. The 37, the gate of friendship, is a Pisces gate. We're in this together. Can I share compassion? Can I understand that you have needs too? It's not just my needs, right? Like, we both have needs. Can we communicate? Can we be open? And the Virgo side, which is setting boundaries and using discernment. How much am I giving? Am I getting back what I'm giving? Can I communicate and ask for my needs? Can I, show up and do the hard work of saying, actually, this isn't working for me. Can we, what do you need? What do I need? And so as an oppositional channel, it's doing that work of integrating Virgo and Pisces. And I think when we understand that this is a global transit for all of us right now, we can show up to it with more awareness, and we can learn to watch those intelligences in action in our body, so that even when if we do the work of this nodal season, learning those signals of, oh, I'm clenching my ass, or oh, I'm clenching my jaw, or oh, I'm pulling away from this person. Oh, I'm contracting, I'm pulling away, and learn to get curious. Oh, what is that telling me? What are the ways in which I do that? What's that telling me about this relationship? And maybe realizing I'm about to explode, and it might not even be about this person. Can I ask for space? Can I ask for time? Can I kind of Gate 40 is a gate of aloneness, and deliverance. So it is the part that wants to give to the tribe and work for the tribe. That's like, I'll do the dishes, but it's then also the part that's resentful when you're not grateful that I did the dishes, right? It's also that resentment piece. And so, yeah, to me, there's beauty in being able to know that we all have our unique ways of experiencing this in the body, and if we're aware that this transit is in place, we can start to recognize our unique ways of experiencing this in the body. And then when the transit is gone, we might have developed some intelligence there, so that, oh, wait, just this is part of the human experience. Whether the transit is there or not, it's part of how we function as humans. And so then, even when the transit isn't there, we might notice tightening our jaw and say, okay, I think I might be constricting. I might have an unmet need. Can I kind of sit with this and use some discernment and figure out where I'm not meeting my own needs for myself? Start to ask ourselves questions and get curious.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Past, Present, Future Cast. This episode is sponsored by me. I don't have any advertisers or funding for this show just yet, other than what I put into it, which is now slowly growing. I now have the wonderful Angelica helping out with social media clips. Shout out to Angelica. Go follow her at temperance.tarot555. And of course, the software and platforms I use to record and distribute the podcast all cost a little bit of coin. So if you would like to support the creation of this show, here's a few ways that you can partake of my services. All information will be on my website and linked in the show notes. One-on-one astrology and tarot readings are available in 30, 60, and 90-minute sessions. Persephonic Tarot School, my 5-week comprehensive tarot course, begins this May, and early bird pricing is available until March 20th. And last episode's guest, aerospace software engineer John Kidd, and I are hosting a 2-day astrology retreat on Mount Lemmon this June, and registration is open for that as well. Of course, you can also support my work for free by sharing the podcast, subscribing and reviewing the show on your favorite platforms, and referring your friends to my work. I am available to bring tarot or astrology to any and all kinds of events all summer long, and I will travel. So hit me up if you've got a wedding, a bachelorette party, or a birthday to celebrate, and I will gladly bring some extra magic. Now, let's get back to the episode. So are transits inherently part of the system of human design that already exists, or is this something new that you're bringing to human design? Because that was one of the things that I was so shocked and surprised about in the workshop that I took with you, of the way that we could connect the body graph to what I know of the planets currently transiting, and how that kind of can be translated in a human design sort of way. Tell me more about that.
Yes. So, yes, this was initially a big part of the work. Ra focused on this in the beginning, and most of my work was inspired by a lecture that he gave called Understanding the Transit Program, which was all about tracking the transits, his understanding and the general understanding of human design. The cosmology says that we are in a massive neutrino field, and that these little tiniest particles that exist travel through the planets and through us and transfer information. And so that this is why the transits impact us. This is why the planetary movements impact us, because we're in this big neutrino ocean and information is constantly moving through these planets and the places that they're in, and gathering information and moving through us and leaving pieces of information and taking pieces from us, and that we are programming the planets and the planets are programming us, and that we're all kind of in this neutrino soup. And so, yeah, a lot of this lecture was all about how the biggest gift of human design is becoming aware of that. But somewhere along the way, he developed these type, strategy, and authority, and type became a very marketable tool, because there are 4 types and 3 of them are pretty rare. And there is this enticing question of, am I special? That I think we ask in the West so much. We are, we want to feel special. We want to feel unique. We want to, you know, have that sense. And so Ra created these 4 types that you could be, and these 3 rare types. And this tool works so effectively for spreading and marketing human design, because people wanted to know, am I this rare type? Am I the 1%? And so people who weren't so interested in just seeing their chart, all of a sudden had this little ego enticement of like, oh, well, I want to know if I am or if I'm not. And then he developed strategy and authority tools to help you make decisions. I mean, we all want someone just to tell us how to figure this life out. We all just want somebody to tell us how to do things the right way. And so here are these tools now telling you it's easy, the right way to live your life, that, it's all here. Just follow this formula. And Ra talked a lot about in some of his cosmology lectures, that, he had, in order to spread the system, he had to universalize things and make things applicable and for people to understand. But then he taught readers, he taught advanced lectures that gets to the truth of things, or that gets to the nuance and complexity of things. So this transit work is a big part of human design. It was from the beginning, and somehow, because it wasn't really marketable, and because it gets into the nuances, because it is demanding of you having a deeper understanding, it's not what's thrived in terms of the popular conversation about human design.
I keep seeing like a lot of parallels between human design and astrology. The first one that I didn't mention earlier was the distinction between, are we using like 7 planets or 9 planets? And Ra talking about how like, oh, we're in like the system of 9 now and we're not in the system of 7. And the way that there's quite a divide between like modern astrology, which puts a heavy emphasis on the outer planets, and traditional astrology, which traditionally didn't have access to the outer planets. But now there is a like increase in people using both. If you learn, like I study traditional Hellenistic astrology with Hellenistic astrologer teachers, but we absolutely incorporate the outer planets. Like there's the both. So there's that I'm seeing that's interesting. And then the way that modern astrology put an emphasis on the sun sign, because it was marketable to easily put horoscopes in newspapers and other publications, because it's easier to identify your sun sign versus your rising sign, which anyone who's reading horoscopes, especially horoscopes written by astrologers today, you should generally read for your rising sign. But the sun sign was marketable and easy to publish. And so that became the thing that now, if you ask someone what's their sign, they probably know their sun sign. And I think probably similar with human design, if you ask someone what's like you've said the word and it's still not landing in my is it type, right? Is there's 4 types?
Yes,
If you ask
type.
someone like, what do you know about human design? They'll know, they usually know like, I'm a generator, I'm a
Yeah.
predictor, I'm a manifesting
Mhm.
generator. They know that, and that's it. So it is unfortunate the way that commercialization waters down these systems, and that's why it's so important to work with people who have a complete, complex, holistic understanding of the system if you're really wanting to get information from it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. Yes, definitely. Um, and part of my work has been figuring out, which you got to experience in the workshop, is like, how much do people need to know Ra's version, and how can I can I introduce someone to their motion chart and electromagnetic transits um, through a magic context of planetary magic? And I mean, you need your body graph to make your motion chart, which is what we did. Like, I walked you through how to make your motion chart. And so you need your body graph to do that. But then you don't need type, strategy, and authority to do that, right? Like, the motion chart just gives you a map of electromagnetic potential. It shows you astrologically when a planet moves into this place, this gate, it will form a channel with something hanging or dormant in your design, and you'll have an expansion. And then when it moves, there'll be a contraction, and then expansion and contraction. And you get to see the rhythm and flow of that. And it gives you opportunities for relationship with the planet. So, like, as you watch a planet move around the zodiac and enter into those highlighted places in your motion chart, you get to find out for yourself, what is that gate? What is that planet? You don't need anything in human design. You don't need to know the anything that Ra said about it. You can just say, I'm watching my experience for this month while Saturn is here. What happens? What do I learn about what Saturn is? What do I learn about what this gate is? And it's all in a tool for experiential knowing, for gnosis, for coming to your own unique understanding in yourself without that. So this is something I've been playing with the planetary magic thing, is like, can I show this? Can I meet an audience of people who are interested in doing magic, and give them a way to use human design to be more creative and more generative in their magic, and to find new ways to do their magic without needing for them to know their type or strategy or authority. Can we explore? Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been trying to figure out, is how much can we deconstruct the system?
That's very cool, very cool. And it's so fun to be able to bring in like a planetary magic aspect. I think the way that you are working with human design is a interesting path for astrologers to take. I think if folks feel like they have a good understanding of where they're at with astrology and understanding the planets in motion and the transits, your motion chart is a really cool way to continue to play with the experiential aspect of transits. I think a lot about, sometimes I think about teaching a class that's like tarot for astrologers, and I feel like human design for astrologers, like that's absolutely like what your work, to me, that feels like a place that your work could really excel, is bringing in astrologers who are already familiar with the motions of the planets, or people who are curious about learning astrology and understanding the motions of the planets, and being able to apply it in this really embodied way. Very cool. I really like it. And is that kind of the where your work is centering right now?
Yeah, so I'm currently getting ready to have a free online workshop on March 10th, um, at 10 a.m. And it's for anybody that's kind of been experimenting with human design, um, and we're just going to make our motion charts just like we did in the workshop. I'm just going to walk people through the process of making the motion chart because it's, it's kind of hard to understand what to do with the tool if you don't know what it's actually showing you. And so, yeah, as long as you have a copy of your body graph, you can come sign up for the workshop and just come make your motion chart. And I'm not going to be explaining a lot of uses for it. It's just about having the experience and community of mapping it for yourself, seeing what it's actually showing, looking at your body graph and the motion chart side by side, and kind of sharing how different our motion charts are with each other, and just any kind of moments of like, whoa, that come up, being able to share. So it won't be intense analysis or teaching. It's mostly just going to be like, let's do this practical thing together of mapping this and having the experience of like truly understanding what is shown here. So I'm working on that right now. I'm getting
Very
ready
cool.
for that right now.
Yeah, you're in that like building process, or the final push towards that
Yes.
happening.
Yeah.
I think this episode is actually going to come out the day
Yeah.
after you hold that
Yeah.
class.
Yeah.
So if anyone is listening to this and they're like, that sounds amazing, that sounds really incredible, reach out to Shannon and tell her that you would like her to host another one so that
I
this
will.
becomes a regular offering. So if you're interested in that class, connect with Shannon, follow her on socials, and get that information so that you know when another one is happening. So looking at the card that came up for your present work, I'm seeing echoes of kind of where we started this conversation earlier today with talking about how human design can be a liberatory practice and how we can work on maybe decolonizing some of what is kind of baked into the creation of human design, because the card that came up, and it flows so perfectly from the Two of Swords. So remember, in the past we started with the Two of Swords here, and then we're kind of growing that figure up, maturing that figure that's in the Two of Swords. They've sat with the information, they've sat with the wisdom and how it's felt embodied within them, and what has been revealed through personal exploration rather than maybe just having information kind of handed to you and said, this is the information, this is the only information you get to work with. We've grown up from that figure, and now we're in justice.
Oh,
Now we're in the justice card, who's also holding a sword, but in their other hand, they hold the scales. And to me, justice is so much about walking our talk and aligning our actions with our values. And so I kind of hear a story of you finding a system that you really liked and enjoyed working with, um, and having a background in various liberatory academic studies, women's studies, and the deconstructive literature, and everything that you've mentioned, and noticing a mismatch between perhaps some of what exists in the system and some of where your values lie, and working to take action to integrate that together so that the system that you're working with and the way that you're approaching this and spreading this information and utilizing it in your life is in alignment with your value system. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. And so you're in that current present moment of being able to walk that as you continue to grow your practice with human design and the way that you're sharing it with the world.
this listen to you say that is bringing up my Libra placements when I'm thinking about justice, and I have
Libra twins.
well, I have a Libra moon,
Beautiful.
and I have this Saturn Pluto Libra conjunction exact, and it's in my
Oh.
sixth house as a Taurus rising, um,
Mm.
and it's in gate 50 in human design, the gate of values in the spleen, and that is a gate of all of the splenic streams: intuition, instinct, and pattern recognition. And it's a sense in the body of well-being or not, a sense of if things are balanced or not. That Libra moon that I have is in the 18 in the spleen, and it is pattern recognition of being able to sense if the pattern's off, if it needs correct. It's the gate of correction. And so there is this sense in which my spleen is really has these Libra, the most of the Libra gates, or if not all of them, are in the spleen. And so there is this. When I think about justice, I think about all of those forces of my sixth house in Libra, and how, especially with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the gate of values, it's critical for me that I have a set of values of how I preserve and nourish and support and care for things, and that I follow them, and that there is a deep responsibility there and in all of my work and my service. And so it's not something, that I feel I can get out of. It is something that is a demand on me, actually.
Yeah, that's incredible. Hearing that these Libra placements are in the sixth house for you from an astrological standpoint. It's like justice is a daily practice
Yeah.
for you. It has to be done regularly, routinely built into everything that you do to kind of move your life forward. And wow, a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Libra is fascinating to me. Saturn is exalted in Libra from a Hellenistic astrology standpoint. So Saturn is there being like, I have all the tools I need to do my job. And there is a great amount of responsibility. Wow. I have to say, I've pulled cards for myself and for you today. And so far, we haven't flipped over the last card yet, but every card I've pulled today has been in the element of air, which I have. Yesterday, I pulled a Sacred Symbols card from Marcella Kroll's Oracle deck, and it was the symbol for air.
Oh, wow.
And I pulled two different swords and the lovers this morning. The lovers being associated with Gemini, very mercurial, gives an airy quality there. And then for you, we've pulled the Two of Swords and Justice, which just also feels like with the sword, with the association with Libra, all very airy. So lots of air going on in my space and with me right now. I'm sitting with that more and more. It kind of makes sense. And I get the podcast going again. So I'm working with all these technological and communicative platforms at this time. So, final question. Moving into the future, what are you hoping to continue to build, continue to create, continue to generate, continue to call in? What's the dream for the future for you right now? Mercury retrograde in Pisces is such a good time to dream up, to dream things as big as you can dream them, no matter how fantastical.
Yeah. But I spent 6 years in a PhD program, and I didn't get my PhD. I didn't complete on ABD, the Alba dissertation. But I loved teaching. Like, I was at the university, I was teaching Intro to Women's Studies, I was teaching Intro to Writing, and I was teaching Disability Arts and Culture. And I loved creating materials. I loved planning courses. I loved just watching my students interact with the text that I picked out and the tools I made, and see what they could make with them. And I think it's funny how I left academia and I entered human design, and it's kind of an inescapable process of improvement. I have the channel of judgment, which is pattern recognition and the drive to correct and improve. And I find myself here in human design again, creating tools, creating programs, creating and so I've created a program called Keeper of the Keys, which will teach people who are readers already. So people who are already doing human design readings, how to do some of this transit work with people, how to hold space. One of the most significant changes I'd like to see in human design is a movement from away from these one-off readings and into relationship. I started that by offering transit journeys, which are like 3 or 4 month packages where we meet once a week and we watch the transits together. And they're usually intentional based off of when you have um, several significant electromagnetic channels happening, or one really significant, like outer planet Pluto transit or something. It's a concentrated, intentional time to really observe and be witnessed and witness yourself and have someone to help you name all the things you're experiencing. And so I would really love to pass on what I've learned over the last 7 years with this tool. I've dedicated pretty much, you know, most of my life to diving into all of the synthesized elements of this tool, and into the system, into the cosmology, created my own stuff, and I really just want to see what others can do with it. I feel like I've reached a bit of a saturation point of of create of creation and understanding. And if I learned anything from teaching students at the university, is that their ideas are always above and beyond and better than mine. And I want to see, what happens when people really understand the motion chart and what they can do with it in astrology and what they can do with it in magic, and how um just I'm just ready to pass some of these tools on to help people create their own tools, to help people shift the way we do these readings, and the kind of relationships that we can form with each other using these tools. And so, yeah, Keeper of the Keys will be the start to that, and I think that will launch either late March or early April, depending on interest. Teaching people how to use some of this stuff, and supporting them in doing their own thing with it. And I would love also to work with astrologers who are curious and interested in how they might take something from human design and bring it into their practice. And Yeah, so I'm kind of just sitting in this moment of really feeling full, ready to teach again and ready to be just blown away by what other people do with these tools, and what other people see and envision can be done with that.
Wow, that sounds very exciting. And hearing you talking about wanting to build relationships with your clients and with your students, and how you're like it's like your cup is so full in terms of what you've studied, what you've worked on, what you've developed in your own practice, and it's ready to run over and share that with other students and readers who are ready to hold what you have to offer, and specifically helping people to hold space in new ways for their clients, and for you to hold space for your students and your clients. Really seeing some hallmarks of the card that came up, which also Keeper of the Keys, we decided before we started recording, Shannon and I decided to use this hoi polloi deck because the back of it is a key. I believe it's the key. I think this image is in this deck, probably on the Hierophant. The Hierophant is always shown with like two keys crossed, which everything you're talking about is also giving very Hierophant. I think you said you're a Taurus rising, correct?
Yes, we think.
And Taurus is the sign associated with the Hierophant card. So that's a very that would be a card I would consider to be one of your tarot archetypes. But the card that came up for your future is the Queen of Cups.
Oh,
So I feel like that bodes.
yeah, I love
Yeah. I
that.
think that bodes very well for everything that you're hoping to bring in the future. Yeah, the Queen of Cups. Do you have any connection to this
Yes.
archetype?
Both the Hierophant and I mean, part of Keeper of the Keys is the lore behind the title Keeper of the Keys is very much um, a set of synchronicities around the Hierophant, um, in that card, and just many mystical connections and experiences that happened around it. And the Queen of Cups is also um, a card that I pulled. It's sort of at the beginning of my spiritual journey, asking about myself and who am I and what am I meant to do. So that's really wonderful that that uh, that card came up. It feels like validation.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a wonderful connection. And it also feels like it's again a evolving and a maturing of the first card that we pulled in this sequence. We started with the Two of Swords, moved to Justice, moved to the Queen of Cups, but water is so prominent on the Two of Swords because the Two of Swords they're working with information, they're working to ascertain and refine and gather more information, but they're doing it in a way that is by diving into the collective unconscious, by diving into internal intuition and kind of watery systems, things that we associate with water, spirit, spirituality, the esoteric, the mystical. So there is that strong water connection that now is again being brought forth with the Queen of Cups. So we have the maturing of the air aspect of the Two of Swords with justice and that bringing in of values and ensuring that the actions and values are aligning with the information that you're sharing, and then also the relational um embodied spiritualism, the embodied aspect of the esoteric, because like again so much of what you've discussed and how from what you've shared it seems like how you've learned and continued to grow beyond just the book lecture information is through this like deep felt sense in the waters of the body, that intuitive connection to the body. So I really like this spread that came up for you, Shannon.
Yes, I love that. And there's just, I have 4 planets in Scorpio, Sun, Venus,
Mm.
Mercury, Jupiter. And and I have my North Node in Cancer. And we are in a period of time, right now the North Node is in Pisces. So there's just all of this kind of, you know,
Everything's in Pisces right now.
yes, that's the Pisces right now, right? Yeah, so
Everything's in Pisces. That's my 12th house. So I'm like,
it feels very fitting, and I love the progression. And yeah, it feels interesting to tap into that earlier moment of pulling that card and that and being able to reflect back and kind of see where I've been over these years. And I do feel ready, yeah, ready to step into that. And um beautiful, thank you.
and your Saturn is in Libra and Saturn just moved into Aries. So now you're entering into your Saturn opposition as well. So yeah, you're really at like a maturing point in this journey. Very excited to see what continues to grow of this and how you continue to share this work. I have two final questions for you about human design. And the first one is what's one thing that you wish everyone knew about human design?
One thing I wish human people knew about human design, that I wish everybody knew about human design, is that it's not just a tool for individuation, it's also a tool for relationship. I'll just leave it at that.
I like that. I like that. And that might, I think that leads directly into my final question, which is how, from your perspective, how can human design help us imagine a new world?
Human design can help us imagine a new world, but helping us to get in touch with our creature nature, to help us hear all of the intelligences, not just the intelligence of the mind, but all of the intelligences of our bodies, our stress systems, our emotional system, our intuition, our pattern recognition, our instincts, our sense of our inner compass, our sense of direction, our sense of knowing when to speak, and our sense of our own energy and how our energies respond to the world around us and people around us. And so I think that Yeah, it can really help us to remember that, like all life on earth, we are creatures and we have these embodied intelligences beyond just the mental realm. And I think we've lost a lot of our ability to hear those intelligences and our ability to trust those intelligences, and we've gotten really lost in systems and logic. And I think human design offers us a way to balance some of that and to come back to our nature a bit.
Right, as you said, come back to our creature nature. I had a creature come join me.
I love that.
This is baby. Oh, baby's gonna purr into the microphone there. This is my roommate's cat, baby. She's been present in the room for the entire interview, but she just woke up and jumped in my lap as you said the words, reconnecting to our creature nature.
Love
So I
that.
appreciate that. Wonderful. Well, Shannon, where can people find you? How can they find more information about your work? Maybe where can they go to sign up for one of these journeys with you? I think um, this is a profound system that has a lot to teach people, and I'm really you have me. I've been on the fence about human design through my entire kind of spiritual journey once I discovered what it was, but I really appreciate the way that you are talking about it, the way that you're teaching about it, the way that you're innovating it as well. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing all of that with me today. So how can folks find you to work with you?
Thank you. I appreciate you so much in this podcast and your presence in my workshop, which was such a cool experience to have. And and for having me here today. So yeah, people who are interested in working with me, you can find me on Instagram at this_HD_experiment. And then you can find me on my website, thishdexperiment.com. You can book sessions with me there for a general human design reading, emotion chart reading. My journeys are cultivated, curated, personalized packages. So those are offered when you book emotion reading. So if you are interested in doing a journey, the first step, like a long-term transit journey, the first step would be to book a motion chart reading. And through the preparation process of that, it would create 3 different options for you, what the journeys would look like when they would take place, and it would all be personally curated. And Keeper of the Keys is going to launch in the end of March or early April, and that will be 6 people in a small group container, practicing, learning how to read motion charts side by side with the body graph and practicing on each other's charts. So it'll be a practice-based 9-week program where we get in the weeds and we read each other's charts and we learn tips and tools and techniques. And then in the process of that, you'll also get your own chart read by the whole group. And get your reading, and then I'd love that this will air after my free community workshop. And yes, if there is demand to do another free motion chart workshop, I will definitely create another one, and I will be doing a reflector only workshop for reflectors with my friend Annie Richardson of Reflector Reflections, and that will likely be towards the end of March or early April as well.
Very cool, very fun. That Keeper of the Keys program sounds amazing. So, human design readers, jump on that. I will put information, links to your Instagram and your website in the show notes. So check those out if you are looking for where to find Shannon. And yeah, thanks so much for being with me here today. Thanks for powering through the tech glitches. And to those listening, thank you for being with us today. And as always, happy shuffling.